Hello, my name is Fatimah Romaysah Binti Radwel, and today I would like to present about my article poster with the title COVID-19 Social Distancing Measures and Economic Growth, Distinguishing Short and Long-Term Effects. And this article consists of a few parts, which is the introduction, the abstract, the methodology, the data, founding and results, and last but not least, the conclusion. So let's begin. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak in early 2021, government policies aim at ensuring social distancing in order to slow the spread of the highly contagious disease have been a source of contention. Social distancing policies have been widely condemned for having negative impact on economic activity. Therefore, this article will examine the short and the long-term impact of social distancing policies on GDP growth rates using quarterly actual GDP growth data. Intuitively, social distancing measures aimed at reducing social contact would be expected to have a negative impact not only on economic sectors involving extensive social interactions, but also on other less socially networked sectors via input-output linkages. Social distancing policies target large swaths of populations, which typically include the majority of a country's population. Because any policy aimed at such a large proportion of a population is difficult to fully implement with limited government resources, there is still room for differences in institutional environments to influence individual tendencies to follow the social distancing measures. Therefore, this article will look at the three aspects of institutional environments, include the democratic values, trust in government, and cultural ties. The objective of this article is to distinguishing a short-term and long-term effects for COVID-19 social distancing measures and economic growth. For the abstract, social distancing policies have been categorized for having negative impact on the economy. However, we show that while they have a negative short-run effect, they also have a positive long-run effect on economic growth. Using quarterly GDP growth rate data from OECD member countries, this article found that the long-term recovery effect of strict social distancing policies on economic growth is 3 times greater than the short-term adverse effect. Then, this article will also look at the relationship between the social distancing measures and GDP subcomponents, as well as the influencing roles of institutional factors. For the methodology part, this article estimates the pool panel ordinary least squares model to examine the relationship between social distancing measures and economic growth as shown in the formula of GDP. T and C stand for quarter and country respectively. The dependent variable is the rate of GDP growth, which is measured quarterly. A is a constant term. The stringency index is the measures of the government's social distancing policies. A country's total new confirmed COVID-19 cases in a quarter equals the total new confirmed COVID-19 cases in that quarter. Therefore, the model includes several control variables denoted by the X, K, C to account for other factors that may influence the gross domestic product growth rate in addition to social distancing measures, while the T is an error term. This article uses heteroscedastic robust standard errors, which are clustered at the country level. This article examines the moderating effect of institutional environment by interacting the stringency index with polity, trust, and tightness indices one at a time. Significant interaction terms would indicate that the impact of social distancing policies on economic growth is depend on institutional factors. For the results and findings of this article, firstly is the impact of social distancing policies on economic growth as main results. Stringency index loads significantly negative. Stringency index remains significantly negative when we control for quarterly. This economic significance level implied that the long-term recovery effects of strict social distancing policies on economic growth is 3 times greater than the short-term adverse effect. This finding suggests that despite short-term negative consequences, social distancing policies promote faster long-term economic recovery. Secondly, the impact of social distancing policies on subcomponents of economic growth. The stringency index is negatively significant with all 3 GDP subcomponents, confirming that stringent social distancing policies harm economic growth by reducing investment, consumption, and exports. Furthermore, lack stringency enters positively significant with all 3 subcomponents, implying that stringent social distancing will facilitate long-term recovery of investment, consumption, and export. Last but not least, moderating effects of institutional environments. The interaction term between the stringency index and polity is negatively significant, implying that the negative impact of social distancing measures becomes stronger in countries with democratic values. The interaction term between the stringency index and trust in government, on the other hand, is positively significant, consistent with the adverse effect of social distancing being weaker in countries with higher trust in government. For the data collection, the OECD database is used to collect data on quarterly GDP growth rates. This information is available for the 46 OECD member countries and observer emerging countries. This article chooses the sample period of January 2020 to June 2021 with 6 quarters of data available. The Oxford COVID-19 Government Response Tracker database is used to obtain daily data for the stringency index, which measures the stringency of government social distancing policies according to the Health 2020. The Johns Hopkins University Coronavirus Resources Center provides data on new COVID-19 confirmed cases on a daily basis. Therefore, this article uses quarterly mean values of the stringency index and total new confirmed COVID-19 cases for each country to link with quarterly GDP growth data. The World Development Indicators and World Governance Indicators database are used to collect data on country-level control variables. Finally, this article connects country-level and quarterly data. The final sample includes 214 quarterly observations from 46 countries from the first quarter of 2020 to the second quarter of 2021. For the conclusion, using quarterly GDP growth data from 46 countries from the first quarter of 2020 to the second quarter of 2021 found that strict social distancing policies caused sharp declines in GDP growth rates in the same quarter, while facilitating GDP growth recovery the following quarter, with the recovery effect being 3 times larger than the initial decline. In addition, the social distancing policies have similar pairings of negative and positive effect on GDP subcomponents such as fixed capital formation, private consumption, and exports. The institutional factors mitigate the short-term negative impact of social distance on economic growth. This article observed negative effect is stronger in democracies and weaker in countries with higher trust in government. Despite public perceptions of the negative effects of social distancing restrictions on GDP growth, this finding suggests that stringent social distancing policies improve GDP growth rates in the long term. That's all from me. Thank you.